Welcome to another episode of Over This Should podcast. We are so glad to have you here again this week. I'm excited to announce our guest, Anna Lakome, who is a career guardian angel. She has expertise in neuroscience, behavioral science, marketing, and so much more. And she's really taken these skill sets to help bring individuals' full selves to the table. Anna, I would love to give you a chance to add anything else you wanted to about yourself for the audience.
I would love to add that, there's so many amazing disciplines out there, like psychology, behavioral science, advertising, and, so many of us are busy working towards that, but we never take the time to put that, flashlight on ourselves and how can we leverage all these interesting things that as a society we're discovering and learning and proving and researching. How can we use it to make our lives better? So that's what I would add.
I love that. That's really interesting. So, would you tell us how you got into the field that you're in?
Yes, it is, I laugh because it's just funny, when you look back at like some of your most difficult times in life and you're like, why is this happening to me? And then now, years later, I'm so grateful. So actually, the reason why I became a career guardian angel is because I went through my own career hell. Like truly, I was invisible for years, overworked, underpaid, overstressed. On top of that, I was also trapping myself, in my mind, trapping myself with diet culture and, always wanting to do all these HIIT classes and eating less and less and less. And so basically, it was a recipe for disaster. And I ended up getting something called PCOS, which more and more women are diagnosed with every year. And it takes years to even get a diagnosis, but it's this huge hormonal imbalance that impacts your body, your mental health, everything a woman doesn't want, like acne, your hair falling out, hair growing in weird places. Like it's like the anti-woman syndrome, in my opinion. So anyway, from all of that, I had to really hit rock bottom. And my story began when I realized I was actually responsible for a lot of my misery. And that was one of the hardest pills to swallow. But once I got over that huge ego bruising of nobody forced me to stay in a job that didn't appreciate me. Nobody forced me to stay at a company that dangled a promotion in front of my face, but then never gave it to me and kept having excuses that made no sense. Nobody forced me to do any of these things. It was me. And
Mm-hmm.
then within that desperation, I realized because it was me, I had the power to change that. So that's
I
exactly
love
what I
that.
did. And then I had no idea that years later I would be helping other women do similar things.
Mm.
That is life.
I love that. Yeah, so often like our mess becomes our message. And what's
Mm,
interesting is I can't tell you how many women and men I work with who say something similar. They are overworked, underappreciated, not valued. The list goes on and on and on. And it takes a moment to realize that that is you saying yes continually to all those things because so often we're conditioned by society and expectations. You should continue to hustle in your job and don't worry if they overlook you, just stay with it. And you're living up to all these expectations that really you have said yes to things that are caging you in and keeping you from your full potential.
mhm. And from your health, from your
Mm.
happiness, and also from that success that we crave, right? The reason why we jump through all these hoops is we think there's a prize at the end of that mission, but there actually isn't. I've realized the prize for overworking is more work. It's never.
Mm.
I've
Mhm.
yet to meet someone who was like, yes, I worked myself to death and it was worth it. Like I haven't met that human yet, but I would love to. If you're out there, find me.
Yeah, we have a saying at work, the reward for good work is more work. So it just keeps flowing,
Mhm.
right? They're not going to go easier on you because you're doing a good job or you're hustling. You're just going to get more of that. I am curious. So the prize isn't the title or the pay increase. From your perspective, what is the prize we should be striving towards?
Mhm. Well, it isn't even the pay increase and the titles. So many people are stuck genuinely and they can't even get promoted. So they can't
Mm.
even get that prize that they think that they want. But I think ultimately, for me, even though I am a career strategist, for me, my ultimate goal with everyone is to find more meaning and fulfillment because that is actually what generates more life force energy for you. It keeps
Mm.
you healthier, it keeps you younger. It's just there's just so many more benefits to focusing on how I feel versus maybe how do people feel about me based on
Mm-hmm.
my title or my salary or my status in the society. So I find that, we really have to bring it back. And there's so many people chasing prizes that they reach and don't even want. How many
Mm-hmm.
times do you reach a goal and you're like, and you just move on to the next, or you feel massive disappointment? You're like, wow, I think even Taylor Swift had said she wanted to win this award that like no woman has won twice. And then when she finally got it, she was like, what? All that pushing for this? Like it didn't even fulfill her. So it's all these like external validation KPIs and metrics that we want to measure ourselves against. And we're trained to do that since we're little at school, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
train step by step, year after year to do that. But I find that that is not the prize. Whether you reach it or not, it doesn't really, I don't think it brings the kind of satisfaction that people are looking for.
Yeah, that really hits. Tell me more about what do you mean by life force?
Mhm. So I do, I love, to study the human brain. I've always been fascinated by evolution and how we developed as a species. But more and more in my work, I'm realizing there is this other component. We can call it spirituality, we can call it woo-woo, we can call it energy, but I'm finding that a lot of there's so much more than a strategy, for example, to get you ahead. There's so much more
Mhm.
than repeating affirmations. And so something that I discovered for myself years ago was this system called human design, where it really talks about, the different we can call them chakra systems. It's a little bit deeper than that, but all these different parts of ourselves that could be either energetic blind spots, could be areas where we're getting energy from or wisdom from. And what I'm finding is it's creepily accurate. So that's why, Pamela, I continue to use that system. And so a lot of us, 70% of the population, is here with a defined sacral, which means they have access to life force energy, but they actually don't have access to it when they feel trapped, when they feel enslaved, when they feel abused, when they feel taken advantage of. And a lot of the systems that we currently have right now are designed that way, unfortunately. I think the people who created the systems thought that they would squeeze more life force energy out of people that way. But the scientific data shows us that it's not working more does not yield more productivity. Working longer doesn't yield better results. And so the spiritual component would confirm that. Squeezing ourselves like a robot or a lemon does not actually
Mhm.
create that kind of energy or creativity or passion that is actually needed to move something forward at work or in your life.
Mhm. Okay, I love that. And so many of us are in situations where we have to work. We don't have a choice.
Mhm.
So, from your perspective, how do we blend that creativity and that passion into the need to put food on the table and a roof over the head for our families?
Yeah. So yes, so I always say Rome wasn't built overnight, right? Most of us can't just exit the establishment and live on an island and live off of coconuts. Some of us maybe can or want to, but what I found and something that I recommend, most of the people who enter my world, whether it's a group program, one-on-one coaching, a human design reading, I give this one assignment. I'd love to share it. It's a 21-day challenge called the Yummy versus Yucky list. And so it's crazy because you think, oh, I know what's yummy to me. It's obvious what's yucky to me. No. After years of you saying yes, like you said, every decision that led to you, every yes that you said to this that led you astray, you become numb to what delights you. You become numb to what is not okay with you. Especially as women, I find that we bulldoze over our emotions. We even bulldoze over our biological needs. How many of us have eaten in front of a computer and not even, or been in meetings and not used the bathroom for hours? I mean, we really bulldoze over our entire being. So then our being doesn't talk as loudly to us anymore. I remember at one point I woke up years ago and I was like, I have the money, I have the freedom, but I don't know what brings me joy. I don't know what to do with this time or this money. I woke up and that was dreadful. That was actually more dreadful than when I felt enslaved because at least I could blame something or someone for my circumstance. Here I was free and I still didn't know what brought me joy. So the yummy versus yucky list is sort of like a course corrector. So for 21 days, combine it with one of your practices you already have in the morning, in the evening, if like maybe you do something for yourself already. Add something. I recommend having a page front and center, yummy on one side, yucky on the other side, and then just take note, like what was really yummy today? What was yucky today? And you'll be shocked what you find when you really discern and tap inside and you base it on you and your feelings and your body's response as opposed to the shoulds and all these things of the world. You'll be
Mm-hmm.
shocked what's yummy versus what's yucky. And that gives you a plan where you can see what's yucky. You can see if you can eliminate it. You can see if
Mm-hmm.
you can delegate it. You can see if you can reduce it. You can at least know, wow, that's contributing to a lot of a drainage of my energy. It might be a friend that calls you every day at lunch to talk about drama, but never takes your advice, and it's the same drama every day and it depletes you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it might be scrolling Facebook. You might find, you know what, it's just an addiction or a habit, and I actually feel like crap after I scroll Facebook. Yucky. So you're like, huh, maybe I'll delete the Facebook app. Bada boom, bada bang. On the yummy list, you will find things that really surprise you as well, because everyone thinks joy and yummy is like a cruise, a vacation, $1 million house, a car. But what we find, you know, sort of like children, right? We are delighted by the smallest things, right? So on your yummy list, you might find like, wow, you know, today during my lunch call, I actually called my grandpa. That filled me up with so much energy for the rest of the day. Or you might find, you know, this morning, this was one of my findings. I used to listen to podcasts every single morning because, you know, you got to start the day, get the information. But I was like, you know what? On the days where I put on music and dance, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, so much more energy for all my other tasks, activities, and being with people. So the yummy versus yucky allows you to really make small pivots, and
Mm-hmm.
my goal is to move you towards more yummy, less yucky over time. So you will find things at work, outside of work that drain you that you can start to limit or know you have a plan to get rid of or eradicate in the future. And your yummy list is kind of like that life raft that if you hold on and do it more consistently, you will generate more of that energy for yourself.
I
So that's
love
what
that.
I recommend. That's the doctor's orders.
I love that. And I imagine it takes time to really piece together the yummy because there's so much noise. And to the point you made earlier, we often don't even let ourselves experience the yummy because we're just grinding. We're just meeting that roles and the expectations. And so I'm sure it takes time to be very intentional and deliberate and remove as much noise as possible to rediscover what
Yeah.
yummy is for you.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's why I recommend it for 21 days, you know, just your standard, what they say for changing habits, blah, blah, blah. But really, 21 days is just like enough time, you know, to go through different weeks, different days. You know, as women, we also have our cycle to consider. There's different things that are yummy, you know, on a week when we're ovulating and we're ready to be out there versus when, you know,
Mm-hmm.
prior to our periods, we kind of want to hermit. So that feels a little
Mm-hmm.
more yummy. And maybe realizing and planning like, hey, next time my period comes around, I'm not going to do any big social activities or, you know, big presentations if I don't have to. So there's power, there's flexibility, and we
Yeah.
just need that self-awareness, like you said, to tap back in.
Yes, yes. So I am a little on the woo-woo side too. I had a Dharma purpose coaching course that I took a couple of years ago, and in that I was able to learn about human design, and I had my chart reading done as well, and it is creepily accurate to to what you said earlier. But I imagine there is a lot of people who are listening to this right now who have no idea what human design is. Can you talk us through it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I like to talk about human design is without getting into the nitty-gritty details that you can Google. I will tell you how I use it and how I use it with the fabulous people I work with. We basically, all you need is your birth information. And because it's so creepily accurate, if you don't have your birth time, with just a little bit of poking and prodding, asking a couple questions, you can actually figure out which chart most aligns with you, even if you don't have your exact birth time, because there's some pretty specific nuances that might change depending on the time you were born. So no worries if you don't have that. And then the way that I like to use that is as a strategic map to understand who you are at your best, who you are without societal conditioning, who you are without your own mind drama, who you are before people told you you can't do this, you can't do that, you have to be this, you should do that. It gives you an understanding of where you innately probably gravitated towards, how you're meant to interact with the world, how you're meant to impact the world with your existence alone. And so I like to use it really strategically to understand how can we bring you back to that? Because let me tell you, it's kind of a map to your yummy, actually. I just realized right now. It's a map to your yummy, and it shows you where a lot of the yucky patterns come from. It shows you where you might have more conditioning. It shows you where you might have a blind spot. Like, for example, a lot of women that I work with, if you pull your chart, you might see you have an open heart. That's where imposter syndrome comes from, not negotiating, undervaluing ourselves, undercharging, all that messy, yucky stuff. So I love it because it kind of also gives you two things. It gives you the permission slip to be the real you, or the most the highest version of you, but it also gives you this big permission slip to forgive yourself for the ways that maybe you have gone astray. Forgive yourself for the patterns that you did fall into. And it really allows you to have a lot of compassion, because a lot of women come to me and they're like, I've been struggling with imposter syndrome for years. And I'm like, boo-boo, what if you are never going to remove that feeling completely? What if that is a part of your dharma, part of your purpose, to feel that and do it anyway, to feel like you don't belong there and still claim your seat at the table? So it gives you a beautiful permission slip to see where you might want to explore your highest self, as well as give yourself that grace for where you might have been a little bit too much in that yucky. And maybe like you, like me, you realize, wow, I did this to myself. So it gives you a little bit more clarity and compassion that way.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard you speak about masculine energy and feminine energy. Do you want to walk us through what it means to be in your masculine and be in your feminine?
Absolutely. So we all have both. They're both yummy and delicious and needed. However, I've noticed the patterns, a lot of the ways that we keep ourselves trapped or we keep ourselves in the shoulds of life, it comes from either wounded masculine or wounded feminine energy. Wounded feminine energy will typically express itself as, you know, wanting approval, and the people pleasing comes out through that way. And if I do more, I will be loved, I will be safe. But that is a wounded feminine, right? And with that, we know with people pleasing comes resentment, right? Why am I not getting supported back? Why do these people not appreciate me? It's not a great strategy, unfortunately. It's a lose-lose for everybody. Same with the wounded masculine. The wounded masculine tries to prove itself with achievements. If I am successful enough, if I make this money, if I have this title, if I have this house, I will be loved and I will be safe. Once again, also an illusion. And I've found in the work that I do with women in the corporate world, and I put myself in this bucket, we tend to fall in the wounded masculine. And I think the wounded masculine emerges particularly, a lot of people talk about inner child work. I actually think it's the inner teenager. It's the inner teenager that sort of had to survive and was like, this is chaotic. I must secure my future. I must secure my survival. And I can do that by using these skills I've developed, studying, working, doing the most, blah, 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 creating, going above and beyond, being a rock star. And at work, then it becomes performing miracles, being a little miracle worker, and that becomes your standard. So once again, it's a lose-lose pattern. And I found a lot of the women I work with, and I'm not trying to villainize either, but the reason why a lot of women choose to work to heal the wounded masculine and be more feminine is because it has so many repercussions outside of work. It has repercussions on our health. With my hyper masculine energy, I had the testosterone of a 14-year-old boy for years. doctors were baffled by my blood results, but it's because my own drive, my body had to produce that testosterone to keep up with me. And that caused a lot of health issues. I don't recommend women going in too far in that direction. There's a reason why we have a smaller amount of testosterone for the female body. We're not meant to operate in that overdrive. It's very stressful for our adrenals, for our beauty, our glow, our health. Oh my gosh. And the masculine energy also, I find, prevents us from connecting with others. When we're so obsessed with external validation and achievements, we're not in tune with our own emotions because we have to bulldoze over them to be in overdrive. And then when it comes to connecting with family, friends, partners, they're not getting the full us. And I think that is actually the biggest tragedy in all of that. We're trying to prove ourselves to be loved, but we end up creating this wall where we can't be fully loved for who we are. So yes, it's a very tragic story.
I think being in corporate myself and working with so many women in corporate, you do have to have an aspect of the masculine energy. You do have to be able to charge hard and be focused on achievements. But I see women who are able to blend that. I want to have an accomplishment. I have KPIs, I have goals, and they blend it with the feminine energy of I'm also going to be empathetic. I'm going to show up in a way that is creating connection. Those women can be very successful, not always, and not in every industry, because some people see that empathy and they try to exploit it or think that person is weak. So it really depends on the environment you're in. I want to caveat that there. But I think there needs to be the blend. I think a woman needs to have a blend, and so does a man, because when you see a man who's just hard charging with no empathy, I'm sure he gets called a lot of names behind his back, right? And
Not
in
as
some
many
cases,
as a
he's
woman.
probably applauded. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
In some cases, he's applauded for being a boss where a woman would be a bitch. So there's that piece of it too. But how do people find the right blend of feminine and masculine so they can show up in a way that is true to themselves but positively impacts those around them?
So I think there's two routes that we can take. One of them is kind of what you already described about blending the beautiful feminine leadership qualities with the masculine, right? And we need the masculine, we need structure, we need processes, we need systems, right? But we can still be human. There's that human element. And I agree, not all places will foster that kind of an environment for women to be those leaders. And that's actually a big part of my mission. I see myself as creating an army of women like that and sending them off in the world to create those environments, because that absolutely has to change. Once again, so many studies show us that that kind of leadership creates more productivity, loyalty, results, but we're so stuck in that toxic masculine hyper culture that we don't even want to look at the facts. Like even the whole 4-day work week being more or as effective as a 5-day, we don't see people, companies really grabbing that full force despite the facts, because it's not factual, it's cultural. And so we need to change the culture with leaders like the ones that you described. So I think that route takes courage. It takes courage to be the first one in your company to act that way. It takes courage to try a different form of leadership and maybe fail, or at least fail by their metrics. It takes courage to be different. It takes courage to maybe be called soft. I know that was my fear. Seen as soft. Oh. So I think the biggest thing for that is courage. And in order to create courage, my recommendation is to get clear on your values, those deep values, and be pulled by your values. So for example, if your value is connection, freedom, justice, whatever your values are, use those to pull you towards who you want to be at work, which as opposed to the old system, which is they push you with fear, right? Bring the results. Don't be a pushover. Lead with a strong hand. That's like pushing. And that to me is, first of all, that's very not feminine, and it doesn't work, or it doesn't work long term. And
Mhm.
so women, I find one of our strengths is actually leaning into our emotions, and our desires and our values are a big part of that emotional part of us. So be pulled by your values to have the courage to be that
Mhm.
kind of a feminine leader. Another
I like
option,
that.
and maybe maybe this option is like a stepping stone to that option, is knowing how to cultivate your femininity outside of work. Let's say you are in an industry or a company or under a boss that is very doesn't allow you to bring your full self at work, or that's not considered okay. How can you create boundaries for yourself? How can you infuse your day with more femininity? Whether it's the way that you dress, whether it's the way that your desk, I'm looking at my flowers on my desk right now, for example, whether it's what you do after work, maybe you take ballet instead of kickboxing. Maybe, you have a rule after 6 p.m., you change out of your work clothes and you dress in your goddess kind of a way, and now you are in goddess mode. I think there's ways that we can remain flexible as long as we are inching forward. I know this is scary. I know this is so scary to do it completely differently. So many of us don't have moms who had role modeled this for us, right? So many of our moms were either in the hyper feminine or the hyper masculine, right? And we you know what I mean? We don't even have these role models. We really are trailblazers. And so compassionately, courageously inching forward one day at a time, I think is the only way to do that. I don't think anyone's going to wake up tomorrow and turn something
Mhm.
off and turn something on, but that's also the pleasure of it. It's kind of rediscovering yourself along the way.
Yeah. You brought up a few good points that I want to hit on a couple different things. One is I think you're right. Like my age group and those around my age group, we typically had moms who were either stay-at-home moms, so they had that feminine energy naturally, or the moms who are trying to knock down the doors with their padded shoulder pads, their suits, and trying to create the spaces that they've created for us. And while it's not perfect, there's still so few women in leadership roles, it's because of the generations that came before us that happened. And so we don't have those role models of how does it really look blended in all cases. There's something that is worrisome a little bit to me though.
Mhm.
And so I love that you said create an army of women who are like embracing their feminine and finding ways to bring that to work. And what worries me there is making sure that they also remember to fully understand their value. So they show up in a way that they can ask for what they want. And the flip side of that, and the piece I think I see missing still, not
Mhm.
unilaterally, but in general, is men. We need armies of men who are willing to show up and with feminine energy too. Because if we're creating an army of women who are fine in their feminism, great, we're going to have more people in HR because they're kind hearted. We're going to have more teachers. We're going to have more nurses that are women. We already have so many of women dominate those roles. How do we teach men that it's okay to be heart centered and people focused and
Mhm.
empathetic? And they could also take HR roles and teachers. And I know there's men in those roles. I'm not trying to be so general, but the
Mhm.
majority of those caregiver type roles are female. I think we should all have a blend of our energy. And I'd like to see us create a world for my son and my daughters where men show up with grace, kindness, empathy as a natural state, not just from a place of achievement and C-suite and corner office.
Mhm. And this might be controversial. So, so this is non-PC, but as women, we really do set the tone for relationships. That is our domain. We set the tone for the home. We set the tone for the partnership. We really do take the lead on the essence of the relationship, whether it's fun, playful, we're focusing on growth, right? Women really set that tone. And I actually have found my perception is it's less so having men lean into their feminine, but actually giving men the opportunity to experience the power of the feminine from the feminine. So seeing these female leaders and the magic that they can do, the magic touch that they do have when they're supported and able to be fully themselves. I
Mm-hmm.
think men without even without even having to take on that specific type of leadership, I think that their support, but also their like recognition of, wow, this was actually needed. This is improving. This is our partnership here. You know, we've spent so many years women wanting to be men, right, in the workforce. I don't think we want men to be women, right? But more so, how do we find and champion the men who are supportive of women, who are supportive of women being brave, showing up in their authentic self, if whatever type of leadership that is. But to me, it's more that. And I think the more women, it's both. Women need to have the freedom to be that way at work, but also the more they are that way, I think more men will be so on board when they're like, wow, like for example, that happened to me at work where I was suddenly head of office and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the youngest one here, one of two women globally to have this role. And I was like, and there's been like this iron grip everywhere, and that's not my leadership style at all. And I was terrified. I had a migraine for a week, but I decided to put my foot down and I said, I'm going to lead through empathy, through growing people, through making a bigger vision and mission for us that's personal, not about the KPIs and the bottom line. And we ended up, not only did we end up growing as a team, but then when HR, you know, did the little survey for satisfaction, we had 100% happiness in the office.
Mhm.
And that is till this day my biggest achievement. It was proving that we can grow and have people be satisfied, happy, fulfilled, excited at the same time. And so
Mhm.
that's what I think needs to happen. I did have the freedom to do that. Maybe not like a lot of support, but once people started seeing my results, that's when they were like, huh, what did you do? How did you do? How did you
Mhm.
get people to be interested? And then I came out with my masculine. I was like, this was my process. This is the system. But the system was birthed with a lot of feminine qualities of wanting people to use their gifts, wanting people to be creative and not robots. And so that's
Mhm.
what created the results in both the happiness as well as the financials. So I think more of that is what we need to see. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, we need these supportive men to be like, and that's what happened to me. I was given, somebody saw something in me, the CEO of the company. He said, I want you to lead the New York City office. And yeah, and then I had full reign to move forward as I wanted. And so I
Mhm.
did. It was scary as fuck. I was like, this is either going to be the best or the biggest, or I might have to just disappear from the earth. If this is a fiasco and all my fears come true, I'm a pushover. I didn't create results. I don't have an iron grip. I'm too young to be a leader. No, none of that was true.
I
So
love that. That's a great story. So you talked about helping people find their gifts. And I imagine, is that part of what you do as a career guardian angel? Is part of that like really pulling out at what people uniquely bring to the table?
Yep. And let me tell you, sometimes it's like pulling teeth. I don't know what it is. It's a couple things, right? As women, especially, we're raised to be very humble, right, etc.,
Mhm.
and like not brag, God forbid. But then at work, we get dinged for not being advocates for ourselves. Like, go figure, like
Mhm.
which one is it, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, it's like a lot of our gifts are so natural to us that we don't value them because hustle culture has taught us that unless we are sweating and killing ourselves and contorting ourselves, like that
Mhm.
gift, that thing is not valuable. Like unless you if you are not going to school for it, or if you are not, I don't know, developing, remember the $10,000 rule, 10,000 hour Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist who said it takes 10,000 hours to become a genius, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so all of us are like, well, I haven't spent 10,000 hours on XYZ. And so a lot of it is helping women realize, I think some of it is my gift as well, to be like immediately, I'm like, this is your gift. I pulled this out. The more that women talk and non, I love it when women nonchalantly talk about about things they're good at. Yeah, I just went in there and there was a lot of tension in the room and I dissipated all of that. So then they were able to focus on their goals. I'm like, girl, like you were the catalyst for that. Do you not see how had you not done that, they wouldn't be successful? So I like to pick up on things women are are saying. I like to give exercises, a lot of various questions, like what do you lose your time on? What would you do if you had to do it for free? What did you like to do as a child? So a lot of these kind of questions that get women to start thinking and brainstorming. And then finally, the human design chart. There's a wealth of knowledge there in terms of our natural proclivities or unique perspectives that we think are not unique because there are perspectives. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a combination of all of those things. And my favorite thing is when a woman's eyes light up and she's like, oh my God, I do have these talents. That is a
Yeah.
gift of mine. And that is so beautiful because it takes the conversation away from, do I fit into this standard of society and the corporate world and the job description to I'm owning my value, my worth, and what I bring to the table. And then it becomes a conversation of who deserves my gifts?
Mm-hmm.
Where do I want to bless the world with my gifts? What company aligns with my values that support my gifts? As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, am I good enough for this role? And that kind of mind drama. So it really flips the conversation when we start talking about our gifts.
I love that. I think that's really important. I primarily coach women. That's my passion. My passion is helping women create the confidence, clarity, communication skills they need to live life on their terms, whether that's a stay-at-home mom or somebody striving for a corner office in corporate America. But I have the pleasure to also coach two gentlemen. And this is so interesting timing because last night we had our coaching session and he had a 360 review from a peer group and from folks within his company. He owns the company. And one of the pieces of feedback was that they wish that he would accept his strengths and lean into them.
Wow.
So it's interesting to me because I primarily work with women where we are told to be humble, to be quiet, to be meek, to be grateful, and all of these things. But what I'm also noticing as I have tentacles going outward is it's also cultural. So there's some men who grew up in different countries, different environments, different influences, and they are taught the same things to be humble. If you are bragging about yourself, there's nothing complimentary in it. So I think it's just finding ways to your point of connecting. What are your strengths? What was it about that childhood dream that you had that really ties through to who you are now? But it's also finding ways to express your strengths so that you don't sound like an ass,
Mhm.
but rather in a way that's empowering and impactful so people know how to leverage your strengths and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there in terms of like the cultural differences. But I think even broader than that, it speaks to how this toxic hustle culture and, productivity is your worth just has a bad effect on everyone. None of us
Yes.
benefit from this. Even when we own the company, it seems
Yeah.
like we don't even benefit from that, right? What kind of joy is it to not lean into your strengths, right?
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, it really speaks to how the work that we're doing, it's individual, but I think it is changing like the world in that perspective as a whole.
Mhm. So, Anna, what do you recognize as your strengths?
Ooh. What I recognize, um, what I'm realizing more and more and more about my strengths are my ability to lead,
Mhm.
not through telling people what to do or grabbing people and shaking them, although I would love to do that, right? Just, what are you doing? But it's actually in living my life and being that example for people of someone who is naturally shy and introverted, but is out there speaking, someone who grew up very insecure, but now feels confident enough to put herself out there, someone who said no to hustle culture and now lives a very relaxful, feminine, creative kind of
Mhm.
life. I'm finding more and more that is my biggest strength and gift is really role
Mhm.
modeling that because once again, there's a lot to be said about educating and I love courses, books, I love all of that, but it's like seeing someone doing it can just ooh, just change, whether we call it
Yeah.
frequency or whatever, like seeing someone doing something differently can explain in a million feelings and words subconsciously to you that this is possible. Ooh, you
Mhm.
desire this. Ooh, you can do this. And I find that I can do that without saying a word sometimes. And so, yeah, that's been my newest realization is it's like it's so much more broader and so much less hands-on than I thought it was.
That's really cool. Will you tell the listeners about your offerings and your programs and where to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So please connect with me on Instagram and LinkedIn. I will say my LinkedIn is, a little bit more professional. So if that's your vibe, I invite you there. If you are into things like goddess lifestyle, if you are into things like Game of Thrones style, Dracarys, and conquering the world, I recommend you go on my Instagram. And then I have a various array of offers. I work with people one-on-one as well as in my groups, which are female only. And in my groups, we have a couple of options from, playing the corporate game to slaying your inner critic. We have a goddess academy where we're tapping into our dark feminine. I usually
Mhm.
like to do that around Halloween, you know what I mean? Really get us in
Yeah,
that mood. And then I currently actually have a Hot Girl Summer Camp, which will be going on all summer with the prime focus of having fun because we
love
can't
it.
keep doing things for productivity or achievement's sake. We also should tap our toe into what would it feel to be a little bit more carefree. And so, yes,
Mhm.
so I invite you to connect with me. I always have something fun and crazy going on.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, the dark feminine sounds really exciting. We'll be checking that out around Halloween time.
Yes.
The last question I like to ask everybody is what is your favorite quote or a quote that's really sticking with you right now? What can you share with us?
So I don't remember the full quote verbatim, but whenever I either run into an obstacle or a hurdle, or I start to get that self-doubt again, or I feel like giving up, or when things aren't going perfectly my way, that perfectionist likes to rear its ugly head sometimes. What gets me back down to earth and grounded in my mission and my gifts is that quote about the man in the arena because
Mhm.
no matter what, I am in the arena. And so like no regardless of the outcomes, regardless of what's happening, yeah, just reminding myself like I am out there doing it. I am in the arena. I am doing things differently. I am trying to create something that hasn't been done before. I am doing things a different way. I am breaking cycles. I am trailblazing. I am in the arena, and that is one thing I think no one can take away from us when we do this kind of work. We are in the arena. And so I don't know, I don't remember the full quote. It's like a long, beautiful paragraph, part of a speech, but just reminding myself, like, we are in the arena, and like, what if that's enough? What if that's enough? We're just in the
Mhm.
arena and we're in the arena.
Yeah, you're in the arena, you're fighting the fight, and anybody who has anything to say about what you're doing, often they aren't in the arena with you, they're in the cheap seats, and
Mm,
so their opinions probably don't matter as much as you think they do. So tune that stuff out.
absolutely not. Exactly.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Well, Anna, it's been wonderful to speak with you. I will make sure to link all of your bio, your LinkedIn, your Instagram into the show notes so people can find you. It's a true delight to learn more about human design, the feminine and the masculine energy, and all the cool stuff that you are bringing into the world. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much, Pamela, and I hope everyone has a beautiful day.